to an Afrocentric exploration of the Holy Writings. Welcome and thank you for joining or not joining on my spiritual journey and exploring these texts the way I have never done that before. Although I come from a religious background, I'll say, and had the opportunity to read the Bible for many, many years. Now, this exploration has taught me so much, and um, I want to capture this for myself so that I can go back and revisit this over the years and see if there was any truth to it, or if this is a take that makes sense for a personal life, and why not for a communal life. I'm using the old version of King James Bible. This is incredible. It has many things that I haven't seen elsewhere, and I am sure that this is something that is of a lot of interest for myself at least. Now, chapter 31st, there are a few things here. One, Jacob leaves Laban, and Laban is Jacob's father in law and the father of Leah and Rachel, the two wives to Jacob, plus the two maids that came from each one of his wives. The second part is Laban pursues Jacob, and in the end, there is a covenant. Now, for the first part, where he leaves Laban, something interesting really happens here, because before he goes, Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah to the field and to his flock, and he brought his wives to speak to them about his plan as he's trying to escape from his father-in-law. And by the way, he has learned that his father-in-law was speaking ill, and his brother-in-laws were jealous of him as to what he has acquired as a result of being in the keeps with his father, and they considered all that as being theirs. So um, Jacob has overheard them talking that and realized that the countenance of Laban and is not toward him as it was before. That is being perspicacious and is a way of reading situations where you are in your environment and reading people, because sometimes we just go through life, and that emotional intelligence is to read where people are at and act accordingly, because these can prompt action that will save or put us in danger. And this is what Jacob does. He read the situation and realized that his father-in-law was going to kill him at some point, and he had to get the hell out of there. So that's what he did. But to do that, he didn't forget that he had his daughters as wives, and he had all these camel. And remember, in chapter 30, he was able to make sure that the sheep and cattle that were um, sparkled and all that kind of thing were his, and they were stronger, and he did a trick there, and he had all this, and he said, there's no way they're leaving me with all this. i have to I have to get out of here now. Wise decision, but he calls his wives and explained to them the plan, and explained to them in the manner that is very convincing and persuasive, so that they can make the choice to pick him over their father. And that, I believe, is a very important element in terms of um, any relationship, any serious relationship, any uh, marriage. I think often, and probably have been guilty of this, I will do my my thing. I will do what I have resolved to do when I read the situation and I see this is not going my way, and I'll have to take action. And I'll take that action. And the way I have included I would say my partner in that was not as effective as I do it now. And I learned that. I didn't learn that. I just realized that I was doing things differently. And I think it has some merit because I can tell the difference when these kind of things happen, because the other party is willing to take a loss, to go against their own intuition, to follow that guidance that you provide because you took the time to explain what it was about. And it is very important to remember that, because there he goes and he leaves with the wives. What happens is Rachel picks up something from his father, right? And what she does is that she takes the gods of his father, and this is gods in plural, and hid them and took off. Now, what happens is that when Laban catches them, he says, something is missing from my household, and I want to know where you took the statues of my gods. And this is really also a testament that there have been cohabitation, or a time where divinity or gods were many and it was accepted as such. And here's the kicker: Rachel comes from this family. Isaac's mother, Rebecca, comes from this family. Initially, when I was reading the Bible, my understanding was that this was because they were worshiping the same God, and God forbade them, or the Lord forbade them, to take wives in the land of Canaan, because the Canaanites were pagan and they were worshiping all sorts of gods. And I come to realize now that Laban, who is brother to Rebekah and father to Rachel, was worshiping other gods. Rachel was brought up in a household where they were worshiping other gods. It had nothing to do with pure worship, as the admonition for them to go take wives among their kindred. And again, it is weird because, all these bloodline, interbreeding is an issue because they could not conceive, or they were conceiving and had miscarriages because, these things are just not the natural way of, procreating. Now, but this is very important because not only this establishes the existence of multiple gods, and there was a hierarchy amongst them. And remember that the God that is with Abraham, from Abraham to Jacob at this point, is not a popular God. It's just like one family that he's dealing with, and he's giving instruction to kings, pharaohs, other people, that you should not touch their wives because they're with me and all that kind of thing. It was accepted that this deity existed and coexisted with other deities that he found useful to go and take wives from to be able to carry the purpose that he had for the descendants of Abraham. And we've seen how it goes. And to me, that revelation was just a detail that I have read, but I never looked at it as a contradiction in terms of why will they go all the way to Syria to get wives, whereas they could have done it in Canaan. So there is effectively another reason why this happened, and hopefully we'll be able to discover that as we are going through this exploration. And if someone else, knows or comes to provide an explanation to this, that's most welcome. But I doubt that it is not a contradiction with what has been presented to the Canaanite against the Canaanites. Now, as Laban is pursuing Jacob, before he catches them, overnight the Lord visits him. The Lord could interact with Laban, although a worshiper of other deities. Go figure. So he had an interchange with the Lord, and he understood what the Lord has said. Now, what is interesting in this conversation is that the Lord tells him, do not speak ill or good about Jacob. Don't even try. He didn't say, don't kill him, don't do anything good to him, but don't speak ill. And you understand where the centralization of the word in these deities is very important. I know for a fact that prior to, there are stories in ancient Sumer about the the predecessor of Marduk and all that kind of thing, that the deity after the small gods or the children of God had mistakenly or for whatever reason thought that they have killed God. There was a war between these kids and Tiamat, who was the wife to the god, and they have emerged a deity that could speak words of magic and had eyes all over his head. And words seem to be very important, and you can look up when we started this and say in the beginning there was a vision. It said in the beginning in John chapter 1, it says there was a word. It just shows how the word has a much weight in these deities, and it's very important to really control your tongue when you're dealing with people who are deemed to be blessed and charged with a mission to accomplish by this deity. The trap will be to speak ill of them. And this is what we do a lot. And this is the Afrocentric spin that I get, is what we do a lot is to speak ill and blasphemy. It's not even blasphemy, it's to curse and engage in words that are not useful for the people who have been wronged, right? One way or another, depending on how you slice this, Laban was in his right. It is him who has given Jacob all these opportunity. Remember, Jacob came caving, running from his brother after, scamming his brother. And this guy took him, gave him 2 wives, although it took 14 years to get 2 wives, but he ended up having 2 more on top of that for nothing. He said Laban has changed his wage 10 times. You didn't have any wage when you came. But the Lord here says, don't speak ill. And Laban hid to that counsel. He understood. It seems like there was a real understanding of the power of this deity of the Lord, especially as to the word that he spoke, or it spoke. And what happens is that Laban goes there, and instead of doing that, he strikes a deal with Jacob. He says, let make a covenant. This is where we are. There is a pillar, there is a heap. You cannot cross this side to come my side. I will not cross this side to go your side. This is where the line is. You stay there, do mind your business. I'll stay here and mind my own business. And we see a lot of time in Africa, there are disputes over lands, and especially in my home country, I think what has emerged now is a dispute of a certain part of the east of the country. And my understanding is that there is a claim now that part of that portion of the land belongs to another country. I'm not gonna name names, but this should not have happened in the beginning to begin with, because these arbitrary demarcations of lands were imposed based on interest, on foreign interests. And instead of solving these issues as brothers, as Africans, we resort to fighting and making addresses that will certainly deserve or instigate a reaction that is specifically contrary to the claims that are being pushed forward. And the trap we fall into, and I say the majority of in my country, is like to get on the bandwagon and start on. This guy it's a vermin, it's a serpent, it should be dead. This is the end of that. Whoever thinks that those statements were made without any backing and calculations from foreign interests, they're mistaken. Because it started somewhere else. It started in 2000 and in 1996. The claim was to protect what was, because there was a danger coming from that part of the country to the other part of the country. That was the claim, right? Although there were also claims that a certain portion or tribe was mistreated by the other, which I have observed and I've admitted in some of my earlier videos when I started in 2019. And now the claim has changed. After the gains that have been made, the claim has changed that no, we want now this portion because it was supposed to be our portion. You see the evolution of that. And we have to be careful with the words that we use against those kind of utterances, because it's not going to end well for us. We think like being mad and being vocal about these things is a substitute to power or to the ability to change the course of action. There is already a static quo on the ground that is imposed, and the forces in place have not been able to change that static quo. And it's not like they have been instructed not to change anything. And the uninformed and the non-spiritual individual would just jump on the bandwagon and start insulting the other party, not knowing that that's the trap. You should not speak ill. You should not even bless that part. Strike a deal, although in these circumstances it is very difficult. But Laban, although worshipping smaller gods, was able to find something that was satisfactory to him, and he lived in peace thereafter. And that's the spirit. That's what I think is the big lesson that we can take from Laban. Because it's easy to look at Jacob and praise for all these things that he has done, rightly so. But I think that the way Laban has been able to pull this off and go back in peace, and he says, you should not mistreat my daughters. You should not mistreat anything that you got from me. And that's the deal. And you should not come towards me. And that is, although back then there was no need for written words or written agreement, but that was the agreement. Whether it was broken, we'll know. But that was the agreement. And that's the line, that's the way of moving. Because I don't think that it is said someone that the lessons you take from the exploration of these scriptures is necessarily the side of the blessed or winning party. Lessons can be learned from the other party. And we can see this is consistent with what other kings, other individuals have done when dealing with Abraham, when dealing with Isaac, when dealing with now Jacob. You see a pattern there that to quell, to squash this disagreement and this impression of misgivings or expropriation, because I don't have another word. English is not my first language. In order to deal with these things or these spiritual movements, it is important not to speak ill nor good about these entities, but rather find a way to strike a deal that will give you peace. Because if you live to fight another day, if you lose by but staying alive and keeping your land, that is what is important. Jacob could have taken anything he wanted, but he didn't take the land of Laban, and Laban stayed firm. And that's the thing. That's my take. I'm sure there is other more nuanced and more wise takes on the scriptures, but as someone who is exploring these on an Afrocentric perspective, I found that this is enough for one chapter, and we'll get on chapter 32 soon. Thank you.